Just Cause 3 is one of my favorite games ever made. But why? Because on surface level, this game looks like another generic 7 out of 10 flick. But I'm here to tell you it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. So let me explain why. The first thing I'm going to be talking about in this video is graphics and performance. Feel free to skip to this timestamp if you want to see gameplay and story elements. Just Cause 3 is a game that came out almost 10 years ago in 2015. But in my opinion, the graphics still hold up a decade after its launch. And I'm not just saying this because I have some nostalgia for this game. In fact, I played it a little under a year ago for the first time, and I still have this much of high praise for its graphics. And when it comes to performance, it's about what you'd expect from a 10-year-old game. It can run on new or old machines very easily on a variety of settings. And this is especially impressive with all the explosions that's always going on. Now, there may have been some performance issues on release, but as far as I'm aware, there haven't been that many issues, and the performance seems robust throughout all the time. Now, I actually really like the graphics in this game. Sure, they're not the same visual fidelity of modern titles, but they still have a really good and unique art style. This game uses very vibrant colors for a tropical landscape, and I thought it was pretty nice. I never felt that this game's graphics were bad at all, or it looked like a 10-year-old game. It looked very well. I'd say on par with AAA titles from just a few years ago. So I'd say the graphics are not really a point of contention. And like I said, the performance is solid to boot. Now I'm going to be talking about the open world of Just Cause 3. So this game is set on the island of Medici, and I actually think this presents a pretty cool open world. You're constantly greeted with tropical colors as a backdrop to the bombastic explosions. The world is pretty vast with 2 smaller islands and 1 main central one, along with a volcano. Terrain varies from mountains to rocky beaches, but most of the game is in the same hilly landscape, which is understandable because it's built around destruction, not having an amazing open world. In addition to that, the world has some pretty groundbreaking physics, especially for the time. Gas tanks, trees, cars, gas stations, etc. can all be blown up with solid realism. And combined with a vast world, it makes this game a technical marvel. So the main activities you do in the open world is go around blowing up outposts for the game's main villain, Traversal. This is kind of a Ubisoft archetype of open world design, but this isn't really a bad thing, because the tools that the game gives you breaks up the monotony. Each outpost is different, and clearing them is fun hours into your experience. The only complaint I have lies with the village type of outposts. They're less bombastic than the other archetypes, and I generally feel like they're more of a chore to complete. But other than that, I think the game approaches the open world aspect very well, and I don't think the destruction and outposts ever got repetitive. These outposts don't just serve as fun open world excursions, but they grant you access to cooler rebel drops, challenges, and most importantly, story missions. Now, speaking of story missions, let's talk about Just Cause 3's story. Now, this is definitely not a story-focused game, so if you go in expecting a riveting narrative, you'll be severely disappointed. But with that being said, the basic premise of the story is that you have to liberate the island of Medici from the dictator Traversal. You clear his outposts and do story missions until you're powerful enough to take him on. Now, the story isn't amazing, but it's reasonable enough to service the gameplay. The characters are kind of lame and the dialogue can feel hand-fisted at times, but it isn't that bad. The game is self-aware, which makes it more manageable. One thing that I did find annoying though were the story missions. While I actually really enjoyed the outposts in the open world, most of the story missions were just straight up monotonous. If I'm being honest, most of them just involved you defending something for a long period of time, which can definitely get very boring. There aren't really that many variations to story missions or different ways you can take them on, and like I said, the archetypes are usually just defend this vehicle or go here and blow this up. That's pretty much it. The story missions were definitely pretty repetitive, which is disappointing for such an adrenaline-fueled game. Now, I know in the beginning I said this was one of my favorite games ever made, but this is really the one complaint I have about it. The narrative is decent, but the story missions just feel bloated overall. So if you're looking for a game with a really good riveting narrative, I can't recommend this game in good faith. It does a lot of things right, but the story is not one of them. So the next category is Traversal. Now, this is usually one of the more subtle aspects of a game, but Just Cause 3 handles it extremely well. The series has always been known for having industry-leading traversal, but Just Cause 3 takes it to another level. From the newly added wingsuit to the long-standing grappling hook. If you get the DLC, which I highly recommend for the extremely low prices offered for nowadays, you'd be able to get a jetpack with rocket and machine gun to glide across Medici effortlessly. Now, with all these tools, you might think Traversal would be easy to master, but no. It actually has a pretty high skill ceiling and constantly makes you feel like you're improving at it. On top of that, the stunning vistas and nice landscapes help Traversal feel fresh. It also embodies a lot of gameplay systems. For example, the Traversal is just fun for the Traversal itself, but mixing destroying things in your Traversal gameplay loop. Also, the better Traversal you are, the better you are at avoiding enemies, which is pretty important. And I haven't even brought up the vehicles yet, because Just Cause 3 actually has a pretty wide array of vehicles from sports cars to fighter jets. They do feel pretty good to control, but aren't on a level as a game like GTA 5. But overall, they're kind of a minor aspect of the game and just serve to break up the monotony by giving you a fun plane to fly or a good view to look at when you're driving a car. So overall, Just Cause 3 has industry-leading traversal even 10 years later, and it serves as one of the main selling points for the game overall. Alright, so the final category is combat. Now this is an interesting one because I feel like this and Traversal go kind of hand in hand. This game does have some decent gunplay, but there is a balancing act between combat and Traversal of the world. But essentially, combat in Just Cause 3 consists of blowing up enemies with rocket launchers and fuel tanks alike. You can also focus on vehicle combat, which is pretty cool, but there are surface-to-air missiles in every enemy base, so be careful of that. If you are going for vehicle combat, it kind of provides a fun minigame to either disable or blow up all the missiles defending the base, and then just go in with your helicopter or jet and just blow everything up. Now, I say that, but the fighter jets are pretty broken. They can just go into a base and blow stuff up regardless of if you disable the surface-to-air missiles or not. But in contrast to this, they don't really show up till much later in the game when you've basically done a bunch of outposts before, so they basically provide a way to break up the monotony. But overall, if we're just talking about the combat of this game in a vacuum, I think it's kind of monotonous. Now, destroying enemy bases will be fun regardless of where you are in your playthrough. However, the gunplay remains largely the same throughout the whole game. Now, this isn't really a huge complaint because most of the upgrades you acquire in this game are about traversal and not about shooting stuff. So overall, the combat in this game is pretty fun, and it serves to go very well with Traversal. Those two go hand in hand. Alright, so it's conclusion time. And I've honestly come to the realization that Just Cause 3 is not a perfect game. In fact, it has a few pretty detrimental issues. But despite that, it still remains one of my favorite games ever made. Because the stuff it does do right is some of the best content in any video game, period. From the destructive sandbox to the vehicular fun and the open world sandbox of Medici. I'd highly recommend this game to anyone that enjoys games like GTA or the like. I think that's about it for me though. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It helps me out more than you can know. And if you enjoyed this video, check out this one where I rank my top 10 favorite games of all time. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.